hadn't been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
And yeah, we're going to talk some Timberwolves for sure here. Less than 2 weeks until the regular season, Kyle Theige. But let's give it up for our Minnesota Lynx last night. Oh my gosh. Game one of the WNBA Finals, a hostile Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Celebrities strewn about. Crowd was going crazy. They're down by 18 points in the first half. They bring it all the way back, cut it to 2. Then they fall behind again by 15 points with just minutes to go in the fourth quarter. They come back, they go to overtime, and they win 95-93. The greatest comeback in WNBA Finals history, Kyle.
That was just flat out one of the best basketball games I've ever watched. I kind of assumed, like if you were betting the game, it kind of played out the first half exactly how you thought. We've talked now the Lynx a little bit here on this pod this season. The WNBA has grown so much since I was a little intern working for the team a decade ago. There's still some issues I have, and one of them kind of came to fruition last night where, like, scheduling. Someone in the WNBA front office probably should stop scheduling these games in, the football time slots, but also for the Lynx to have to come back and play after Game 5 like a night and a half later. They looked tired in that first quarter. They looked tired in that first half. And that's to be expected, and you kind of think maybe they're just going to get bounced in Game 1 and then try to recover in Game 2. But then you also remember that Cheryl Reeve coaches this team, and she is the greatest coach in WNBA history, and this is the Spurs, this is the Warriors. I mean, this is, even though it's no remaining players from that dynasty, although Rebecca Brunson's on the coaching staff, they are just so tough. And it's led by, and this is the utmost compliment I can give, but Fee is a serial killer. She is, when you ask casual fans or just people in your life, like, who are the 5 best players in WNBA, I don't think she's going to be named.
She's not a household name outside of Minnesota.
And she's probably the best two-way. I mean, Aja Wilson is also really, really good. But she's making a case to be the best two-way player in the league. I mean, her defense last night was incredible. Minnesota has
that block near the end where she's getting fouled and getting hooked.
Yep.
And still spins around and blocks that shot.
And then just the cold-bloodedness of hitting that fadeaway jumper to kind of ice the game. So she is Minnesota has the 2 best defensive basketball players on planet Earth. And for them to come back in that second half, I mean, a lot of credit to the coaching staff, but that Courtney Williams 3, which then became a 4-point play, you thought it was going to be like one of the craziest daggers of all time, and then obviously it goes into overtime, but just that's kind of, sports, right? Like, you just love the resiliency and the toughness of this team that doesn't have a Caitlin Clark or an Aja Wilson or a Sabrina. Like, they don't really have what you would think to be household names, but they just have a bunch of really talented basketball players. And it's a credit to Cheryl and everything that front office has done to kind of reinvent themselves on the fly, especially while the league gets bigger and better. It's a little super teamish, right? Like, a lot of these teams are building 2 and 3 stars, and the Lynx have just kind of developed their own. So, amazing Game 1. Again, Game 2, Sunday during the football time zone or time slot. Probably could do better there, just because I think more people should be watching this stuff. So, I'm not sure if the WNBA commissioner knows what's going on, but great Game 1. Shout out to the Lynx. And now they have to be, right? They have to be the favorites, betting odds to really pull this thing off and win another title.
Well, they weren't. I still think it. I think it goes 5, but they were 6.5-point dogs in that game last night because of everything you just said. The travel schedule, they literally played like less than 2 days earlier. The road atmosphere, the Liberty are also just like largely considered better throughout the course of the year than
they're great.
The Lynx are. So all those factors. I also, something else to bring up off that game, and I hate being the complaint about broadcast. When people say, like, you're watching a Vikings game and it's like the announcers are out to get the Vikings, and usually that's never true. But last night, and I get this is the top WNBA, ESPN's WNBA coverage. Ryan Ruocco and Rebecca Lobo are the team. But correct me if I'm wrong here, but Rebecca Lobo is like the greatest player in Liberty history, right? And Ryan Ruocco is a New York-based, like local and national New York-based play-by-play guy for TV. So it would be like if you had, I don't know, like if you had, I'm trying to think of, if like Lindsey Whalen was calling the game on ESPN with Jim Peterson or something. Like that's what was happening last
Or like,
night.
yeah, like another, or like, I'm just thinking of hypotheticals. Like if Bob Costas was calling Yankees playoff games. Oh, wait, he is.
Did you
And
hear
he's-
how sad he was after the Aaron Judge double play a couple games ago?
It's
The Royals. There's
it's
can he
so
beat it out?
embarrassing.
No, he can't. Unfortunately.
When that double play happened, Bob Costas sounded exactly like Eeyore. We're just like, oh, like what an absolute loser. But no, it hasn't been great. I do like Ryan Ruocco and Rebecca Lobo is really good too. But there was some bias last night. But again, I think that just feeds into, I'm sure, Cheryl will point that out. At shoot around this morning, the Lynx are actually 7-point dogs now for game 2, but they are slightly favored to win the series, aka win the finals now.
Interesting.
No one believes in them. No one, no one. They're always going to be underdogs. They're always going to be kind of the stepbrother, stepsister. They're just always not going to get the respect that the bigger teams. I mean, this is a New York basketball team that also has super duper stars and Sabrina and Stewie, but it doesn't matter because Cheryl says we don't need anyone other than, the 12, 15 of us in this locker room. And they pulled off, like you said, maybe the greatest comeback in WNBA history. And now it lines them up to, if they can just steal one on the road, come back to Minnesota, that place, Target Center is going to be stupid loud.
So much fun
for those games. So
what are tickets? What's the secondary mark? I'm going to check this right now because it definitely feels like the WNBA, all the data this year has shown crazy spikes in interest and everything, but it kind of feels like the WNBA Finals the last few years, especially this year, are becoming a much bigger event too. Just
yeah.
ESPN has pulled out all the stops with, they've got the massive like 4 or 5 woman panel now before the games live on site. Like they're actually putting budget into this more. One other thing here while I look up ticket prices, and I'll raise my hand on this. Before the season and last year, I was of the belief that the Lynx would be better off losing as many games as possible and tanking to have a shot at this last draft at Caitlin Clark or Paige when she comes out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was in the camp of it's almost like bad that they're so competitive and they're going to win too many games, but is it better for the long term of the franchise to have a couple really bad years? And boy, Cheryl and Nafisa Collier proved idiots like me wrong here.
Not just idiots like you, brother. We are idiots together. Because again, I don't want to come off as like there are way smarter people that cover this team and follow this team. So maybe I am a casual, but I just love them because again, they're the first opportunity I had in sports. And shout out to Aaron Henning, who still works for the Lynx and kind of gave me a chance to be in pro sports. But I was looking at tickets, by the way. It's under $100 still for game 3.
But still, man, like this is it. But that's like upper level nosebleeds. Okay. If you want to sit like lower level right now, and it's early, like I just picked a random section, 113 for game 3, Target Center, 283, 304.
Oh my gosh.
Section 106, 229. So you can sit upper level for under $100.
Okay.
But right now, section 131, 400. That's wild. That's pretty wild. I love it.
And so back to you and I just being idiots. I too thought that. I know the WNBA has kind of added a wrinkle, I believe, where your lottery position, I think, is based on multiple years of a record. So it's not like a classic just tank job where you can have a bad year and get a high pick. But I thought the same thing because, as we talk about the WNBA growing, it's largely due to the fact that they have incredible talent coming through the pipeline. Caitlin and Paige and, other players that are coming up down the road. So it would have made sense to just, hey, like I think the Lynx the last 2 seasons before this one were like under 500. Just throw away another year, try to get a shot at the hometown hero. And they just did the opposite. And I think a lot of people early on probably criticized them. We're like, again, you don't have multiple stars. You don't have all this household name talent. And they were like, bleep it. Like, this is what we do. This is how we've always done it. And they're 2 wins away from another title to hang another banner at Target Center. So incredible stuff. Did you see, too, that they're going to add next season they're going to make it a 7-game series. So to your point about this league growing, like that's also going to be awesome. Like the finals will be 7 games.
Well,
I think
and
that
think about,
is awesome.
For a long time, the TV ratings maybe didn't justify it, right? Because you're running up against if you're ESPN, it's like, well, we could put another game or two of the WNBA Finals up, but we also really want to run college football or Major League playoffs or whatever. And now the TV ratings and the spike, not just for Caitlin Clark games, but across the board, are just up on the rise historical. Where it makes sense to add these premier matchups, the semifinals and the finals. Put more games out. People are going to watch. This is kind of a dream scenario. I mean, Caitlin Clark getting to the finals would have been a dream rating scenario, probably number one, because it would have been the biggest viewership. But having the New York-based team get to the WNBA Finals and tap into that market, and then whatever national value the Lynx dynasty reputation has. So it's just super fun, man. Napheesa Collier is a beast, and the 4-point play from Williams last night, man, like she's bounced around to a bunch of different teams and has found just a great fit here. So I know we haven't done a ton of Lynx stuff, obviously, on Flagrant Howls and Score North, but here they are, up 1-0 in the WNBA Finals, and it's fun to talk about them. So,
and if Minnesota is becoming more and more of a basketball city and state, but back to the ticket prices thing, again, everyone has different financial means and stuff, but if you have an opportunity, I remember being at those Lynx games during some playoff runs, like, you got to go next week. If the weather's good enough, it's a warm, brisk October so far. We're lucky with the fall, but get to one of these games because you could see something truly historic and truly special. I mean, there are players on this team that are going to have their jerseys hung up when it's all said and done next to Maya Moore, next to Rebecca Brunson, next to Simone Augustus. So incredible basketball last night. It was on my main TV over the football game. Just really, really proud of everyone that supports this team and has helped rebuild, the latest dynasty in the WNBA is kind of back.
Yeah. Hey, before we jump into some Wolves discussion here, including Julius Randle, a lot of people come to Minnesota, they get traded, and their families are like, Minnesota. His wife loves it. He loves it. So we'll get into some of that here. But shout out to KW Outdoor Solutions, which if you are in the holiday light hanging mood here in the coming weeks, which I know that we are in the Mackey household, don't do it yourself. Anxiety and stuff that you get climbing ladders, let KW Outdoor Solutions do it for you. Anything from design to installation to maintenance to takedown and storage, they handle everything. And in terms of hanging logistics, roof lines, trees, shrubs, they will do everything for you. You can maybe choose just a simple single colored look or go full Clark Griswold for your holiday light decorations to put a jolt through your neighborhood. Learn more at kwoutdoorsolutions.com, kwoutdoorsolutions.com. And hell, maybe you're looking for a place to stay downtown Minneapolis during this Lynx run or Wolves season coming up. Element Hotel is a great spot, just steps away from Target Center and Target Field. It's a Marriott Bonvoy hotel as well for points purposes, right on the light rail. Super walkable to some of downtown Minneapolis's finest, most popular bars and restaurants. So if you're just looking for a really nice centralized place with garage parking, bright natural lighting, city views, Element Hotel, downtown Minneapolis is perfect for you and your friends. It's pet friendly as well, so bring your furry friends. Find out more, and you can even just go to scorenorth.com/element to find out more. scorenorth.com/element. Element Hotel just down the street from Target Center and Target Field. So, all right, Julius Randle and Donte DiVincenzo. The more I see, I've watched Donte DiVincenzo hit a bunch of threes in that first preseason game multiple times on repeat now. He's probably my new favorite player next to Anthony Edwards in the league. And the fact that Julius Randle comes in and just him and his wife talking about how much this is much more their speed than Midtown Manhattan or wherever they were staying. These guys are all in, man. It's kind of fun to see the reactions from these guys coming from New York and how are they going to react to this, and they seem to love it, Kyle.
How poetic to go from Lynx Liberty to talking about Julius Randle, just another L for the Big Apple when it comes to the premier basketball city and the premier state in the country, Minnesota. It's been fascinating. I'm excited we're doing this Friday morning. Word is that Timberwolves Sixers tonight down in Des Moines, Iowa will be on NBA League Pass. So if you're trying to catch tonight's game, I think it's on. A lot of us are still kind of like in the gray. We don't fully know, but tune in tonight. I think the game is at 6 p.m. Central Time. But if you throw it back a week to last Friday, when the Wolves played the Lakers, I tuned in like everyone else to kind of set my whole schedule to watch that game. I have rewatched the DiVincenzo threes multiple times every day. It's like coffee, DiVincenzo threes, then log into work. But I don't know if you saw this. This is just like a stupid story. But watching the game, DiVincenzo did a couple things right away that we haven't seen really, right? Like he just threes in transition, just taking shots that I don't think a lot of guys on this team have taken. And I said that after 8 minutes of watching him, he's top 10 Timberwolf for me of all time.
Of all time. Should we update the list?
We might have to update the list.
Hold on, let me open it real quick here.
So I just said, like, holy bleep, like I love this. This is going to be a top 10 Timberwolf for me.
Number 10 is Stephon Marbury. For me, on my list, totally comfortable bumping him for Donte DiVincenzo.
Yeah,
Actually, Wally Szczerbiak is 9th. Is Donte DiVincenzo already better than Wally Szczerbiak after one preseason game? I think so. Let's put him in the top 9.
Yeah, I think he has to get in. Yeah, I think he can bump Wally out. And I think, who else would agree with that? So I just sent a dumb tweet like I typically do, and then I don't really read replies or whatever. But I woke up the next morning, and I guess it had done some numbers, and someone's like, hey, well, you got to check this out. Joe Budden, our friend in the podcasting realm, had quote tweeted it. Joe Budden from Pump It Up, Pump It Up, and quote tweeted with like crying emojis. So I was like, well, I got to go look at this tweet. All the replies were from Knicks fans that were like, please take good care of Donte. Like, we miss him. Just a lot of, he played one season with the Knicks, Phil, and he is like a legend in New York. And again, New York, the Big Apple, like where basketball is the mecca. So
they traded a dog for a cat at their own peril.
I knew that was coming. It still hit me. I think it's going to be incredible. I really am excited still to watch how Randle fits in. Because Dane and I did a pod yesterday, and we talked about what's the worst case scenario of like the Randle Gobert fit. And we kind of centered on maybe personality wise, they don't mesh as well. And who knows? Like that's just, we're trying to come up with things that wouldn't work. But I'm really interested to see how Randle fits in because I still think, DiVincenzo's a core piece, right? He has a multi-year contract that's like a steal. But I do wonder if this thing can fully bloom without Randle fully fitting in. And so far, he's said all the right things. I don't know if we talked about this yet, but his comments about Finch are comments I've never heard a player say about a coach that got acquired. Like, he talked about wanting Finch to follow him to New York when he left New Orleans. Like, that stuff was pretty complimentary, I thought.
So, on the Julius Randle fit thing, I have a take on that, too. People act like, at least some of the dissenting opinions about this trade, like the fear mongering. Well, you just upset the apple cart here on a Western Conference Finals team. How are they going to space offensively? How is Julius Randle going to fit offensively? I'm actually more worried about the defensive fit because the defense was the number one net rating defense in the NBA. Are DiVincenzo and Randle going to fit in with what the Wolves did defensively last year? We know that Cat's size, especially against certain opponents, the Nuggets are well documented. His size and rebounding were a huge factor in why the Wolves were the number one net rating defensive team. I think if you were ranking like individual defenders, you'd have to go down a pretty long list before you get to Cat. Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards when he wants to flip the switch, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, maybe Cat. You start debating just with like his size, 5th or 6th on the team. But on offense, this was the 17th ranked offense in terms of net rating. It's not like you're protecting this Golden State Warriors, 125 points a game thing from a few years ago. So I've heard some people like, boy, how is he going to fit offensively? I don't know. It wasn't even like a top half of the league offense last year. So I'm fine shaking it up and trying something different. And you know what? If maybe there's some spacing issues with Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, guess what? There were spacing issues on last year's team and the year before that. They haven't had great spacing on offense, and that's been a major problem. So I think one thing that people aren't looking at enough is when you watched Wolves versus even Wolves Nuggets in some cases, but Wolves versus Mavericks, it felt like the Wolves were one microwave scorer away from being an actual NBA Finals contender. And it oftentimes felt like they were just one player away. Like their rotation, while deep in the regular season, it just felt like, man, 7 guys, maybe 8 that you can rely on in a playoff series. And so what did they do with this trade? They traded 1 rotation player for 2. So they expanded their rotation. And this doesn't even count like Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr. and, some of these other young guys like Josh Minott. But the other thing they did was they got 2 players that can create offense. Julius, hey, we need a bucket. Anthony Edwards is being double teamed over here, or whatever it may be. Or Anthony Edwards is in foul trouble or something. Julius Randle can get a bucket more than Cat. I'm not saying that he's a better offensive player because Cat with the shooting, if you get him enough looks. And then Donte DiVincenzo in a different way can get a bucket by just running around and coming off screens and getting open. So I don't know, I hear some of the skeptics, but the more you dig into this thing, Tim Connolly was looking around the corner here while people were saying, run it back and see if Tim Connolly was looking around the corner just like he did coming off the 46-win season when he took that job. But why would you upset? He has a longer-term view, and he sees things that average idiots like us clearly don't, Kyle.
You know what else he was probably looking around the corner at? Is that he realized that around the corner was probably more teams like the Mavericks and the Thunder. And, behind him was a team like the Nuggets, right? Like, obviously, the Nuggets could have just closed out Game 7, and this would all be a different conversation. But to this idea that, oh, my God, how are you going to beat the Nuggets now? There's a chance that Tim Connolly and Matt Lloyd in that front office is like, why do we have to worry about them? And that's not shade on the Nuggets. I think Nuggets fans would say that they've taken a step back by some of their losses with Bruce Brown and now KCP. But the teams that you probably do have to really worry about at the top to get to the finals are Dallas. They punked you in the Western Conference Finals. Or OKC. They might have had the best offseason in the West with their additions. So they got more shooting, which is ironic because they got rid of Karl. But in my opinion, I think they got better shooting. They might be able to play smaller. They're probably going to be more physical. I don't know if they're going to be as good defensively because those are 2 different things. But I think you're just going to see Tim Connolly really was the first to kind of re-embrace the concept of size matters. Like, he went big before other teams went big, and then you saw other teams start to have a big 4 and a big 5. And now I think he's kind of pivoting again to, not that small ball is new, but there's going to be some lineups, Phil, when we start doing your favorite thing, 3-4-man combinations. Like, if you can give me I keep saying if you can give me like a Nikhil, DiVincenzo, Ant, Jaden, Gobert lineup, I mean, that team can score a lot, especially if Nikhil is confident in his jumper. But, I mean, they're just going to give up negative points, that 5-man rotation, in terms of defense. So I'm really excited for it. But, again, I do want to see how Randle fits because I don't think this thing – and maybe he plays some small ball 5. Maybe he does. Dane brought up a good point that Julius Randle made it work with Mitchell Robinson, who is pretty close to kind of what Gobert does. Not a lot of offensive game, try to feed him around the rim and stuff. So it's not like this is new for Randle playing with another big, but I still want to see it, right? I still want to see how he embraces it. But so far, the way he's embraced the community, slower pace of life, the coaching staff, just being, as he said, like a dog next to Ant, he has said all the right things. Now I just kind of want to see him do the right things.
What is the, we were texting last night, what is the Julius Randle, Donte DiVincenzo comparison that you wanted to bring up?
Just stop me, full stop, if I go off on a tangent or I'm like, that's not a good comp. But I was just thinking, like, history of the Minnesota Timberwolves and big trades and trading big guys, because really, outside of Ant, the best players in Timberwolves franchise history have always been power forwards or centers. But we are kind of like a decade removed, 10 years removed from, it's like full closure. I think I'm a millennial, so this is maybe like Gen Z closure, but the Minnesota Timberwolves had this opportunity one time to trade a really awesome stretch 4 for a left-handed power forward and a 3-and-D superstar, and it just fell through the cracks, right? David Lee, Klay Thompson. Now they finally get closure by trading.
Was that Kevin Love?
Kevin Love for David Lee and Klay Thompson. Fell through the cracks. How would that have changed the history of basketball.
For both teams.
Yeah, for both teams.
Because I don't know
exactly.
that works out the way that it would have for the Warriors either, if they split the Splash Brothers. But
7 degrees of Kevin Love, not Kevin Bacon, is like you don't do that trade, and then Kevin Love becomes Andrew Wiggins, and Andrew Wiggins becomes D'Angelo Russell, and D'Angelo Russell becomes Mike Conley, and now you're in the Western Conference Finals. So it is kind of a fun just to look back and then think like 10 years later they actually did trade the big shooting spacing 4/5 for a 3-and-D guy and a left-handed bruising power forward. So I might be the only one on planet Earth that actually thought that was interesting or fun, but it's fun to look back at the Timberwolves' history of, because again, I didn't think that in the moment with the Karl stuff, but it's like, oh my God, they just keep trading their best players who are typically big guys, and I hope this one works out much, much better than the KG trade. Again, KG is the best player in franchise history, but the returns on that package were not great, and the Kevin Love trade package ultimately probably didn't turn out as great as you would hope. So they have a chance here to finally turn this thing around and win the trade, and I do think they will. I mean, I think those two guys are going to fit seamlessly, and I think DiVincenzo being a part of the core 4 or 5 now with Nas and Rob and Ant and Jaden, I think they did a good job, and I think now that the emotions have kind of subsided, I'm all in on this trade.
I do wonder, I was texting you this comparison too. It feels a little bit to me, and I don't remember the exact components to this trade, but like almost 15 years ago, a really good 50-win Denver Nuggets team traded Carmelo Anthony because he had told the organization, I'm going to be a free agent in a year.
Yeah.
I am not going to re-sign. So I'm going to tell you that in advance. If you want to trade me, trade me. And so they traded Carmelo to the Knicks. So the Knicks get the best player, and they sent pieces, and I think it was a multi-team deal that included like maybe 2 or 3 other teams, but the Nuggets got some other pieces back. Didn't they get like Gallinari? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, no, the long story short, Carmelo should have just signed there in free agency because he stripped the Nuggets of all their good players, but it was like Wilson Chandler, Gallinari, I think Mozgov, like the Nuggets got a bunch of fun pieces that actually, to your point now, made them better.
They were. So and that's where I was going with this, which is they traded Carmelo after a 50-win season and a first-round playoff loss. The lockout year was the next year, 11-12, and their winning percentage was about the same. But they were a 57-win team in the next full season after they traded. They went from 50 to 57 wins, despite trading the best player on paper in that deal. And I think something similar could happen to where the Knicks think we just need that other superstar to put next to Jalen Brunson, and then we can go forward. But I like the Wolves roster, and I like the way that these pieces fit better for the Wolves. And I don't think you and I have talked about this, but Brian Windhorst came out like late last week, I want to say, and he had, after the initial wave of reaction from everybody, he had talked to a bunch of NBA executives, and he said, I am surprised that the majority of NBA executives that I have talked to think that the Wolves got the best of this deal. So like the initial reaction was, holy crap, a massive trade went down on Friday. And the second reaction was, why would the Wolves do this right before the season started? But then once everyone takes a deep breath and you start talking to people around the league and the Brian Windhorst of the world, the fact that people who run organizations look at this and say, okay, kind of a shocking trade, but we think the Wolves got the best of it. I don't know. I found that interesting.
I do. I find that interesting too. For what it's worth, I'm going to somehow, some way thread the needle perfectly of cheering for Karl in New York while also cheering against the Knicks. I think that should be easy. But this week news came out that like Mitchell Robinson now is going to be out for the rest of the calendar year.
Yeah.
The team's really fun on paper and they're well coached. Tibbs is a great coach, but they're going to have to rely on Karl a lot to play the 5 now. They don't have a lot of depth behind him. So it's going to be a fascinating situation. And, to D'Lo's credit, never too high, never too low. I don't think anything's ever as bad as you think or as good as you think. So when the Towns trade happened, I think a lot of people were doom and gloom. I probably was in that a little bit too. But once you start to pull back the layers and then see the basketball, right? Like that helps. Like seeing DiVincenzo, if he comes out and shoots 0 for 9, you're probably not having these takes. But he looked really good in preseason game 1. And tonight I think they'll mix it up and try to really lean into 8 to 10 minutes of Ant and Julius Randle out there with the starters. So that'll be really fun too. But I'm with you. I think anytime you can get multiple good players for one good player, I think that's probably a smart move, and you get an asset, and we'll see what happens with KDB. But yeah, just the more and more I kind of digest it and talk about it and think about it, this team is going to look different, and they're going to have some struggles. But you said this at the top. I think it's also important to remember that the Towns-Gobert fit, it wasn't ever an A. Now, they played great defense, and they did upset the Nuggets, but it wasn't like this was this perfect marriage offensively.
Yeah.
So, I don't think Randle's bar offensively is going to be that high in terms of trying to mesh with Gobert, because he does. He has to fit with Gobert for this to work.
It's almost like Connolly had this phased out over a 2 or 3 year plan because he brought in Gobert and everyone was like, well, how is Gobert going to fit with Cat? That doesn't make sense long term. But it's very likely that Tim Connolly didn't view Cat as a gear. We'll see how it goes. But I think he always, even going back to last summer, I think he thought I can move Cat for assets. We did these episodes 2 years ago when they made the Gobert trade, and people are like, well, that was the final move. There's nothing else. They've reached the end of NBA transactions. There's nothing else they can do. And we're like, well, no. I mean, there's other levers you could pull, and they do still have first round picks every other year too that you could use to draft players or whatever. But there was always the pulling the Cat trade lever sitting in the background if they felt like another move needed to be made for them to be a championship team, and it happened at a weird time, but he pulled that lever. So before we wrap this episode, any other final words of wisdom from you?
Yeah, just two quick on that. Do you think, you don't have to go super long on this, but do you think Tim Connolly makes that move if he has any sights on long-term not wanting to be here? This is pretty much reckless speculation for a Thursday on a Friday.
No, it's a good question.
Just gut feeling and maybe, again, I'm just kind of throwing that out there for fun, but do you think he makes a move like this if he doesn't think I'm going to be here more than just this next season? And again, I know ownership will play a big role in this, but just wanted to ask you.
I do.
Okay.
I think for two reasons. One, he's here for another year, and he's still seeking his first championship as a Pobo because he left the year before the Nuggets won theirs, right? He built that team and then left right before they won the championship. So for just professionally, ego, everything, you want to win a championship as a Pobo. And we don't know, he could exercise his out clause in his contract next summer, but right now he's trying to win a championship. So I think he's operating in that mode. I think he thinks this move gives them a better chance to win a championship this year. And I think he thinks it gives them flexibility under the second apron luxury tax in future years if he's still here. But the second reason I think you would be willing to make this trade, even if you sense that people love Karl Anthony Towns, you could leave in a year if you wanted to. If people hate you because you traded Karl Anthony Towns and you become public enemy number one because this trade doesn't work, you just exercise your out clause in a year from now and you could take a job somewhere else. So it's kind of the best of both. If it works out long term, he has set this thing up. And if it doesn't, he can bail if he wants to. If the ownership thing doesn't go his way. Now, I did see him lurking in the background of that Glenn Taylor lasagna party photo that came out the other day.
2 minutes. I asked Phil, but Phil's been really busy because he does other podcasts. He has other responsibilities. He's getting awards. He's flying to New York.
Losing awards.
Yeah, losing awards. Staying at, I think, good hotels, maybe bad hotels. We'll try, maybe. We'll have to do it later this season, but I kind of wanted to just do 45 minutes just on the photo, where we just go through every person in the photo and be like, what are they thinking right now? We'll probably start
Anthony
with Glenn.
Edwards wearing sunglasses, Glenn Taylor looking like Weekend at Bernie's, just woke up from a nap or something. It was bad.
But again, the sky is blue, the weather is warm, and the Wolves did have a lasagna party. So that's one thing to think about too at arbitration, right? Depending on which side you want, if new owners who have done pretty much everything right so far, are they going to have a new meal tradition? Or do the courts and the judge decide, you know what, all this other stuff isn't as important. We need to make sure everyone gets down to Mankato for some lasagna.
Does A-Rod eat lasagna? He doesn't look like a guy that pounds lasagna. But
I'll look into that. I would imagine.
Check with your sources.
I'll report back. But no, the last thing I had is just shout out to, it's a big birthday month, as we've said, but Mike Conley, I think, turned big 37 today. So
wow, dude. Mike Conley.
Another year older. I hope Mike plays less games this upcoming season, but I also, just watching old games from last year and playoffs and stuff. Mike Conley is a guy I just don't think we talk about right now. Minnesota Mike, legend, but I think we're so caught up with DiVincenzo and Rob and another step for Ant and Julius Randle or Nas. I think Mike Conley still is the straw that stirs the drink, and his health will be something to monitor because they need that man almost as much as they need Ant come April and May and possibly June. He is still a big glue piece for what this team is trying to do. So happy birthday to Minnesota Mike.
Yeah, Minnesota Mike. It feels like he's been here for 10 years. He fits very well. He's Midwestern, Ohio State guy.
I hope they retire his jersey too. Just retire everyone's jersey.
How many guys there's so many talkers for like pull-ups. How many guys on the current roster? So Cat's gonna get his jersey retired, right?
Oh,
he'll for sure.
Wrap it up, but
how many
I
other
saw some
guys?
People that said no. You're a lunatic.
It's a yes.
It's
Dude,
easy
The
yes.
Wild retired Mikko Koivu's jersey. Like
Mikko
he was never like
okay.
just a good solid player for a long time, right? And I've been anti-Cat in a lot of ways, and I'm telling you that jersey belongs in the rafters for this franchise. This isn't the Lakers, by the way, where we should probably set a Hall of Fame standard for
it's
which
more like
jerseys.
the Clippers. We'll retire Taylor Swift's jersey too. Carl's is going up there for sure. Ant is going up there for sure. I think depending on how much longer they stay successful, like let's say they make in the next 4 years 2 more Western Conference Finals and one of those is a finals run over the next 4 years, does Nas's jersey go up there?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. I think that would be the next
if
one.
Rudy is here for another extension and they do those things, like it's the best team in Wolves history over the course of X amount of years. I think we're talking maybe Rudy, Nas, Ant, and Carl.
So, but in the order of current roster right now, power rankings, you would say Ant 1.
For sure. I'd retire his jersey now, actually. I would just do it like before the home
Skip
opener.
the game and actually do it in Des Moines. Just hanging it down in Des Moines. Number 2 on your power rankings right now, most likely would be Nas over Rudy, though. It has to be.
That's fair. Because
Okay,
he also
Rudy.
he'll have a longer runway if they sign him to an extension as a Wolves player.
They should just hang Jaden's in front of the wall that he punched. So it wouldn't be in the rafters, but it'd be down there just like a memory of like, hey, remember when that happened and then he turned his life around?
There's still
stuff.
a knuckle blood stain on that wall, I'm pretty sure.
Good stuff this week. I'm excited. This was a weird week to have every other team in the league played like preseason games every other day or whatever. The Wolves had a weird week off, but it picks up now, and we are less than, I think we're 11 days away from
The 22nd.
opening night.
Yeah,
So
22nd.
I'm excited.
LFG. All right, he's Kyle. I'm Phil, and this is a Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.